Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Alien Familiar RPG Podcast. I am Clayton.
I'm Kyle Perkins.
And before we get started, you can find show notes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/alienfamiliar. And if you would like to help us out with hosting costs, you can help us out at patreon.com/alienfamiliarmedia. And any help would be greatly appreciated.
Clayton, do you mind if I set the scene?
Go right ahead.
You wake up to find your hands bound by rope. You notice your clothes have been replaced by ragged rags. You feel the cold breeze of winter blowing through your hair. A faint smell of pine and juniper berries fills your nostrils, wafted in by the breeze. You realize you're on a wooden cart. You can hear the sound of the horse's footsteps crunching through the gravel, plowing through the snow, the creaking of the wooden cart. And even though your senses may be dulled, you feel the presence of other people surrounding you. One of them speaks to you. Good, you're finally awake. Gotcha, listeners. Yeah, you fucking fell for that one, didn't you? You're all like sitting back, imagining yourself in this beautiful place. No, you're in Skyrim, and that is what we call a meme. Right? Meme? Meme? Meme?
Meme?
Fuck, it's meme. My bad.
So today, we're talking about RPG memes. What they really say about the hobby, about the players, the game master, and the characters that we play. To start off, I'm going to give the definition of a meme, because I find that most people are familiar with the internet definition of what a meme is, but most people aren't familiar with the actual sociological definition of a meme. A meme is an element of a culture or system of behavior that may be considered to be passed from one individual to another by non-genetic means, especially imitation. And then the colloquial internet definition is a humorous image, video, piece of text, etc. that is copied, often with slight variations, and spread rapidly by internet users. And today we're going to be talking about how these memes, some of which exist solely on the internet, and some of which have been kind of in the in our cultural understanding of what a role-playing game is, whether it's the very, very broad, not really quite understanding what it is definition that a lot of people who don't play, particularly role-playing games, but just games in general, they're kind of understanding of what this game is and how that is passed on from one group to another, but also how we as gamers spread our own ideas of what the game is and kind of our expectations and our understanding of what the game is. And I have my organization broken down, dividing memes into a few categories. First category being memes about how the game itself is played. Next is memes about the players and the game master. Then memes about the characters, spells, and abilities. And then memes about monsters and or gear. I'm going to start off by just going over one of the memes that I've encountered more often than probably any other meme. And that is the idea that violence, and usually fire, is the answer to the cause of and the answer to all of role-playing game problems. This is evident in like memes that quote the movie Aliens, where dust off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. And also memes in which just the simple meme of something being on fire and then a black box with white text underneath of it just saying "kill it with fire."
There's a really funny. What's that show called? You have two people and they give you a category and you have to guess words that you think are in that category. And it's a competitive game show.
The $10,000 pyramid?
I don't know, maybe. I don't really watch game shows.
That if that's the one you're thinking of, you're reaching back. That's really old school.
I'm not sure what. Well, no. So this has been running. within the past 10 years.
I'm not familiar then.
It's just on the tip of my tongue. I'm sure that if you're listening to this, you're like yelling out the host's name and like, anyway, there's, somebody who, put in like, onto a video clip, like titles above people's heads, and it was, a cleric and a wizard facing off, and the host, who's a guy whose name I cannot remember, he, asks the question, you need to get into the shop and take an item that's important to the party, to the quest, without the shopkeep, knowing. And immediately the wizard's just like, fireball. and it's this really funny clip where like in the real show, the woman who's up for her turn says something ridiculous, and the host is just like, what? Like that? Like fireball? You want to use fireball? He's like, that cannot possibly work. And the idea is the audience, they'll say things that they think fit the question, and they look up at the board, and sure enough, one of the things the audience said was fireball.
Yeah.
I just explained that really poorly. I sound like a 75-year-old trying to explain memes, but it was very funny.
And there's another one of the player says, I cast fireball. The game master says, the room is 20 feet by, and then ... and the player interrupts. Did I stutter? I didn't ask for the room's dimensions. I cast fireball.
That sounds about right.
So what does that say about the game that we play? The games that we play, typically the rule set is 90% stats for how to adjudicate combat. And violence is an answer in this game in which almost all of the rules revolve around how to resolve issues in a violent manner. I mean, it really reflects the fact that we're playing this game, this escapist game, to get out of our normal modes of problem solving and just go for the most violent ones, because that's kind of what we've learned from media. That's one of the reasons why we play this game, is to get out this aggression and frustration by doing violent things.
Because in fucking real life, we're forced to file an anonymous complaint, and if that doesn't work, go through HR, where we will be put on file, but our HR representative will keep us safe from the person who's harassing us, at which point it then goes to adjudication, and we have to meet across the table from this asshole with a fucking HR rep there, and we can't just stab them, Clayton. We can't. Don't try it. I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, it's a fantasy fulfillment, and boy is it fun to blow up things with fireball. There's probably more elegant solutions, but I think that is another like trend in memes, is that your players will always go for the least elegant solution. It's a beautiful representation of Occam's razor.
Yeah, the simplest solution is often going to be the one that the players go for, and in these games, the simplest solution is to just kill everybody.
Is it appropriate to talk about murder hobos now, or do you want to save that?
I think that's a great segue.
I think it really explains the murder hobo ways. It's such a popular trap. It's such a beautiful pit to fall into, because it a lot of times is the quickest way to your goal, and your goal is to level up, get better abilities, to acquire wealth, to
establish your power.
Yeah. To escape, to have fun doing things.
Doing things that you cannot do in the real world.
Yeah.
And most of us can't just go around willy-nilly attacking people and or killing people.
I have a few memes about how generally it seems like the memes, the memosphere, generally it seems like the memosphere seems to think that murder hobos suck. Sorry, I don't know any way to talk about memes without sounding old, but I don't care. I'm over it. I'm done with it. What have you discovered about murder hobos, Clayton? I'm going to share mine after a while.
I don't have any specific memes about the players being murder hobos, but the trends that I've seen is that it's usually the players. One of them that I've seen is the player characters like walking into a shop fully armed and intimidating the shopkeep into giving them whatever they want, and threatening violence if the shopkeeper doesn't do it. And even if the shopkeeper does do it, because they've threatened violence, they go ahead and kill him anyway to keep from getting a bad rep.
I have a perfect story. The image is Conan the Barbarian, Arnold. Talks about how the fighter is a human barbarian, attacks and kills everything he sees. Everything. Any NPC I throw at him. Fuck this guy. They're fighting a Chul. Barbarian loses nearly a third of his HP in one shot. The DM says the Chul neatly severs your arm off and it falls into the waters below. The player loses his shit. The rest of the party's laughing their asses off. Damn it, all my weapons are two-handed, says the barbarian. Oh, okay, fine, alright. In the next town, there's a smithy. There's 3 options for magical prosthetics, each with the bonus and detriment. He takes all of them and kills the smith. The next session, the DM has the Chul come back and take the guy's other arm. Enjoy juggling between your cursed arms, you piece of shit. There's a lot of stories like that.
And it also illustrates just the game master just getting frustrated more and more with the players not wanting to play the game that the game master has come to the session with. The game master crafts this story and they prepare for it. They've stat everything out that they're going to need. And then the player characters come in and they're different people. They have their own ideas, and those ideas immediately run crossways to the plans that the game master has. And the game master often has to resort to just improvising things on the fly.
Yeah. There's another story where a game master has the party who he thinks is going to be kind of, chaotic good, chaotic neutral, maybe. And he sends them an informant for a cult that's been established nearby, and the informant is going to tell them about the, plot hook for the plot that the GM has developed, and have them go and infiltrate the cult and take out the big bad evil guy, and they just kill the informant as soon as he shows up. And so then he's like, okay, alright, no, fine, this is fine, they want to be evil, fine, I'll have them join the cult, okay, cool. And they do kind of vaguely follow that and kind of join up with this cult, but keep doing murder hobo shit and attract the attention of a party of NPC lawful good adventurers who just come in and fucking steamroll the place because they didn't commit to their action. Like, the GM was happy to improvise, but then they didn't commit to that thing they were going to do. They just kept murder hoboing, and so he just rolled in with people who actually follow commands and fucking mopped up the place.
And I think that as the game master, you've got to be flexible in the stories that you tell to account for that, because, like we've said multiple times, if you've got 4 or 5 players sitting around the table, those 4 or 5 players are always going to be more crafty than what the game master is going to be able to present or come up with as far as the plan for solving a problem. Either they're going to be smarter than the game master, or they're going to be more powerful than what the game master had anticipated.
That seems to be a trend in memes, yeah. As I put it in my notes here, players are the biggest assholes in the world who have the best ideas in the world.
Well, whether or not they are actually the best ideas, they are definitely the ideas that get implemented and end up running the show.
We've covered this many, many episodes ago, but for as many depictions in media there are of GMs being the, shitty ones, being the ones with a god complex who, the DM exists to torture the people and to have fun themselves and make them die and not have fun. That's a common... Listen to some of our early episodes. We talk about that a lot. In the meme space, there don't seem to be a lot of stories of that. It usually ends up being beleaguered DM has to put up with party's nonsense. In the end, everyone ends up having some fun.
And I think part of the reason why that is because the people who are most involved in the hobby and would post memes and stuff would be the DMs. They would be the people who are running the games.
That's interesting.
Players often, the majority of players that I've played with over the years, they are basically casual about the game. They don't really think about the game a lot in between sessions. They don't put a lot of energy into the hobby when it's not game time. That's by no means 100%, but it is definitely the majority of players that I've seen. And I think that kind of goes into why most of these memes are favoring the GM.
Yeah, the GMs are the one going and posting and making memes and going on TG and going on Reddit, and it does seem like when players post, it's usually like incredible feats or like very cool stories about things they did, and naturally we're going to brag when we do cool stuff. But that I have several things I found about just like ridiculous cool stories. Though interestingly, a lot of those stories do focus on how a player, like someone who says they're a player, posts a story, and they talk about something cool they did, while also talking about how they, like, shoved it in the face of, capital T, capital G, that guy. Like, TG, what I've referenced before, by the way, being the traditional games board of the cesspool that is 4chan. It's unfortunately a source of a lot of memes. One of the more reasonable 4chan boards, I guess, which is saying a lot. Regardless, yeah, like, that guy. Don't be that guy. Lots of stories of that guy. It's what my character would do!
And we've all had that guy in our group in one form or another. Like any group that has been around for more than a few years, and has had a few players cycle in and out, you will encounter somebody who is a stereotypical that guy who just doesn't jive well with the group, and maybe they are in some way not entirely socially apt. And that leads into another meme that I see a lot, is just the meme of the fact that gamers themselves are antisocial or have poor social skills.
Yeah.
I've seen it less over the years, just because gaming has become more mainstream than what it was 20 years ago. But it is still there in some of the memes that you still see coming out.
You pretty much never see anybody defending, and the kind of person we're talking about now isn't what I mean by that guy. This is like just creepy, well, okay, on the lightest end of things, just very socially awkward, people. Quiet, socially awkward. I've actually seen some very heartwarming memes about like socially awkward players starting to open up, or like, like three people in an image talking, one person starts to speak, the middle person in the image turns around and slaps them and says, "Shut up and stop interrupting." Middle person, who is the GM, turns back to the other person, "Please continue, you say more." And it's, the labeled as that quiet, awkward player who's finally opening up. Like, that's good shit. But, yeah, like, just, oh my god, weird, okay, can I share two examples?
Absolutely.
Of creepy, weird people? I had called this category in my, air quotes, research, "Don't be a creepy asshole." So, I once played with a guy in the Adventurers League. Stereotypical neckbeard, overweight, fedora, trench coat, smelled of raw sewage, etc. Insisted on playing a female elf ranger. Guy named her Arwen, after Lord of the Rings. Every session, he would have her be very flirtatious and would in-character flirt with other party members. Anytime his character was hit with an attack, he would describe how her clothes were starting to tear due to the hit. Eventually, this guy told us that he literally loved his character and he wished that elves were real. Obviously, it was disturbing and mildly hilarious at the same time, but the worst part happened a few days ago. The owner of the game shop found him in the bathroom jacking off to a picture of the elf archer from Goblin Slayer. Dude was immediately banned. My face when I'm down a player for my game. So, like, this one's long. I'll summarize it. There's a guy talking about how he was playing with someone he was, like, interested in dating. And one creepy player at the table went so far, in this story told by a stranger on the internet who would never lie, went so far as to, when the GM, like, took a break and some players went out to smoke, this creepy player took the dude's phone. Creepy player was obviously, like, also interested in this person at the table, and texted that person from the GM's phone a bunch of really creepy bullshit. And then, like, the phone died or something happened and the GM didn't see it, and the player who the GM was interested in didn't see it. Until, like, the next day, when the GM his phone starts blowing up once he plugs it in, from this person who thought the GM was texting them creepy, sexually suggestive bullshit. Eventually it all came to light. Creepy player was booted from the game. But, like, just, like that level of, like, really, really creepy, weird, inappropriate people seems to be what makes it to the memes anyway. We all know that there are much milder examples out there.
Yeah. And it's the extreme examples that stick out in people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the examples you remember to then pass on and in and of themselves become a new meme.
Back to that guy briefly. There's a dude here who's talking about how a player would roll and then quickly snatch the dice away. And it became a meme where this guy not every time, but he would do it so much that he was clearly cheating. He would roll it and just go, nat 20! Well, nat 20! And eventually they, air quote, lost his dice. Like somebody kicked it and then somebody else kicked it and it went underneath a piece of furniture and the guy lost his dice. And so then they kept having him use, their dice. And so he couldn't snatch it away and hold on to it. They'd have to be like, okay, thank you. I'll take that back now. Oh, you rolled a 10. And eventually he quit.
And I've experienced that myself, first person, of a player lying about their rolls.
Yeah, me too.
The player that I had, they would roll and quickly sometimes even snatch up the die before it stopped rolling and declare a number. I didn't pick it up because they would always declare a number between 12 and 17. Not a crit. He rarely said he got crits, but it was a high number so that he was confident that he would almost always succeed.
Yeah.
And it took Beth pointing out, hey, he's doing this because she wasn't the game master. I was the game master and I had every other thing at the table to think about rather than whether or not there was something anomalous about this guy only rolling between a 12 and a 17.
Mm-hmm. There are plenty of memes about dice. You buy one set and all of a sudden you're bombarded by the urge to collect dice, that sort of meme. And plenty of memes about lucky dice, people who, they buy a set, the D6 always seems to get 4 through 6, and they really aren't cheating. But there's kind of this unspoken, everybody wants to use that guy's D6.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people who cheat on the dice. And I hate you. I wish you the worst, most painful spider death. They nest inside of you. Roll a nat 20 on that medical check, bitch.
Yep, that is the surest and fastest way to a booting from my group, is to be caught cheating about your dice rolls. Kind of related to that, only in this instance they might not even have rolled, is another meme that I've seen quite a few variations on, is of a player coming to the game with a pre-rolled character, and the stats are a little too unbelievable. 3 or 4 18s out of 6, where 18 is the highest number that could possibly be rolled.
There are some very funny ones where, just the theme of the meme is player brings a character to the session, to a new game. Very, very funny stories surrounding that.
Or the player is bringing a character from somebody else's campaign, and they've either got incredible stats or they have some item that is beyond what their character should have, like a 3rd level character coming to the game with a +5 weapon or something like that.
Yeah. Items, homebrewed skills, and they're like, my previous GM allowed it.
Yeah. And that just goes to where I'm sure that some of those are 100% legit, because we get attached to these characters, and if the character has been really awesome, we want to continue playing that character, especially if the character is still pretty low level. We haven't had a chance to basically tell that character's story or advance that character to a point where we're ready to retire that character. The temptation to continue to bring a character from one campaign over into another, or to have a character who has all of the stats that you really want to have for a particular character. That's why in my games, I never allow players to bring characters in from some other game. I always have them roll, or if it's a point buy system, make their characters over again so that we don't end up having that issue.
I don't think I've ever played a game where all of the players didn't make a character around the same time. Like, obviously, if a player can't make a character creation session, they can do it on their own or do it with me or whatever. But, like, I have no qualms about somebody bringing the story of a player to my table. You did that in a Star Wars game that KD DM'd. But, like, I just think it's part of the, like, collective fantasy to all generate characters at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, with like organized play and stuff like that, you don't have the time to create the character right there. But with organized play, there are very rigid rules about what your character is whenever they are first created. And it's something that an experienced game master can look really quick to see whether or not you're in the ballpark of following the guidelines.
If you really want to piss off somebody at organized play, bring a character that is stat-wise all correct, but do this with your character's name. So the druid says, "My name is Eric with a K," and the DM says, "All right, and your last name?" "With a K." "No, I got that. Eric with a K. What's your last name?" "My last name is with a K." "Wait, is your name Eric? "My last name is with a K." "Okay, wait a minute. So to clarify, my last name is literally the phrase, air quotes, with a K. It's all one word, with a K." "Okay, so review this to make sure I got it right. Here it is written down." "No, I spell Eric with a C." Oh man, that's a good one. That makes me laugh.
I actually had that organically come up in a game several years ago. The player, I don't remember the name. It wasn't Eric, but it was something. It was something that ended with a K, with a K sound, and he was playing a rogue. So, and this was his character's basically pseudonym. It was one of his fake identities, and so he didn't have a last name for the character for this false identity, and so whenever he was explaining how to spell the name, with a K just stuck as that character's that pseudonym's last name.
So we kind of have covered that players can bring to the table immense amounts of pain, but also they can have just some ideas that the DM sort of adopts. So what I mean by that is something that I think we've all realized. As you're going through your campaign, a lot of times players will start to guess what might be happening or what might happen next or where the story is going. And a lot of times those ideas are going to be better than yours. And you are absolutely, without a doubt, allowed to take those ideas and say, "Oh yeah, it's been that way the whole time. Congratulations, you've guessed my story a bit."
You're a very smart, attentive player to have put all those pieces together.
In the distance, you see a warehouse. Now, is that like a werewolf, but like you turn into a house? DM furiously writing, "Now it is."
So that's kind of in the vein of monsters. I want to segue into some of the memes about mimics. Mimics are a classic D&D monster. They look like a piece of furniture, often a chest, and whenever the players get too close, it attacks them. This is a creature that I absolutely love to have in my games just because it is one of those early D&D creatures that exist only to fuck with the players. And my favorite mimic meme is of a group of adventurers walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Why are you carrying weapons into this bar?" The party says, "Mimics." The party laughs. The bartender laughs. The table laughs. They kill the table.
That's very good. I love that.
Like I said, the sole reason why that monster exists is because Gary Gygax or whoever created it was probably a Gary Gygax creation because that's a weird creation. In the early days, you were just creating stuff to fuck with the players and to seem like the game master's goal was to contrive of ways to just kill characters. That's something that a lot of memes, older memes, tend to focus on as the role of the game master is to fuck with the players. The game master is this malevolent player at the game who is there just to cause suffering.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, the classic Dread gazebo. Like, that's where that kind of comes from. Like, and I guess it makes sense somewhat that media still depicts tabletop RPGs in that way. Because they kind of were that way a little bit. Like, I guess people were just really into this kind of new, novel way of playing and didn't have time to make sophisticated characters and really role play out something. Is that what it was, Clayton?
It really was like that. But your example of the Dread Gazebo is something slightly different. That is an example of the Game Master getting incredibly frustrated because the story goes that the players came across, they were out in the wilderness and the Game Master describes a gazebo in a meadow. The players didn't understand what a gazebo was. So their characters were interacting with it like, what is this thing? I shoot an arrow at it. And the game master just got so frustrated that whenever the player shot the arrow at it, he said, "Fine, you have awakened the Dread Gazebo. It chases you down and devours you."
I've never heard the full story on that.
There are quite a few older stories that occasionally come up in one context or another. Another older story that I absolutely love is the story of the Head of Vecna. Are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so in Dungeons and Dragons, there are artifacts, and 2 artifacts are from the Archlich Vecna, who became a god. One of them is his eye, the other is his hand. In a particular game back many years ago, it was a campaign that was considered a living world where there were more than one adventuring groups, more than one group of players playing in this world. And so one group decided to fuck with the other group by spreading rumors about this powerful artifact. Everybody had heard of the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna. They told the story of the Head of Vecna.
Okay.
The way that the artifacts, the Hand and Eye of Vecna work is you have to take out your own eye or cut off your own hand and place this artifact on it.
Okay.
Or in your eye socket. So they spread this rumor that there was this Head of Vecna where you had to cut off your own head and then put the Head of Vecna on in order to gain the powers of Vecna. The players invested a lot of money in actually creating a dungeon of their own in order to entice the rival adventurers to go and get this. And they create this dungeon, but this particular group, they did this while one particular player was on hiatus, and that player comes back and doesn't know that the other people in his group created this story. So he gets the idea, I'm going to get the Head of Vecna by myself. And so he goes through, he gets the Head of Vecna.
And the players don't tell him?
Well, according to the story, the players don't tell him.
Uh-huh. That tracks.
They get all the way to the point where, and this character is a druid, so he can summon animals. So he gets the Head of Vecna, what he believes is the Head of Vecna, but it's just this decaying head. And he summons a gorilla because a gorilla has hands, and he commands the gorilla to cut his head off and then quickly place the Head of Vecna on his head. And the story ends with the first group's players who created this finding the dead body of their druid with this head, with the decapitated body of the druid, the supposed Head of Vecna sitting next to it, and just a scimitar laying in the grass because the gorilla, once the magic that was summoning him dissipated, the gorilla was no longer there.
Just imagine this sad fucking gorilla cradling its druid buddy, holding a mummified head, and just kind of like trying to put the head on the druid's like stump neck, and then eventually going like shrugging. I've never heard that. That's amazing. I love that. I want to play more games where we have, like, multiple parties in the same world. I've only done that once, and it was a blast. It was a fucky blast. Like, it was complicated as shit.
It's fucking hard to run, I will tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Because time, the way time works is that if one group travels from one town to another and it takes 3 weeks, suddenly that group is 3 weeks behind the other group. And it just becomes a logistical nightmare for keeping everybody on the same time frame. The only way I could see it working is having something very rigidly in place where, okay, each week that we play, 1 week of real time and 1 week of in-game time passes. So each session literally takes a week. You can go into a dungeon, and whenever you come out of the dungeon, however long you've been in that dungeon, that's how much time has actually passed in the world.
I mean, it's hard enough to get one group scheduled to play on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Imagine doing that for 2 groups.
I cannot.
Neither can I. Neither can the internet. Because there's so many memes about how scheduling is a fucking nightmare. So many.
And that is so true. That is probably the most true meme that I have seen.
It's too real. It makes me sad. Like that sad kind of belly laugh you get where you're like, yeah. It sucks. It's really fucking hard, man. Getting people together, getting people to not, like, cancel on you at the last minute. There's a meme I'm looking at right now. An interviewer at a job interview says, "Why do you think you're qualified to be our next event planner?" And the dungeon master, the guy says, "I'm a dungeon master who had 48 weekly sessions last year." Interviewer says, "Shit, welcome aboard."
And another layer in that is that I absolutely believe that a lot of the skills that particularly a game master, but also some players, some of the skills that they demonstrate in the games absolutely should go on resumes. I mean, the ability to plan and organize, to motivate people, to interact with people, to get shit done, mm-hmm. should absolutely be something you can put onto a resume.
Settling inter-party or interpersonal conflict.
Yep.
There's a lot of memes about, and this is true, I mean, I do it anyway, and I've seen you do it, a lot of GMs will, like, cook and provide snacks for the group and have to be aware of their group's dietary needs, you know? It's ridiculous. Like, telling people, because you know they're going to be an hour late, that the game starts an hour earlier, and, like, watching as they arrive on time, and then they realize that you're not salty for some reason, and they figure out now they can be 2 hours late. That's that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I think quite possibly the most real example of this is a tweet. Playing D&D is super easy. All you have to do is 1, set a date that works for everyone. 2, do hours and hours of prep work. 3, watch everyone cancel on you. 4, drink alone. Dangans and dragons. We've talked about how it's hard to get people to show up. Mm-hmm. We could briefly talk about shitty behavior of people once they do show up. Like, I guess we've talked a lot about shitty in-game behavior, but, you know, there's plenty of memes about people being on their fucking phones.
Yeah. And that's been a meme that has only existed for, 10 years now?
Roundabouts, yeah. You ever heard of the dice of punishment?
Don't think so.
Alright, it's a 4chan green text. Had a DM about a clever way of dealing with phones. Anyone who touches their phone without permission, or did anything that required... That doesn't make sense, that's a typo. Anyone who touches their phone without permission must roll the dice of punishment. The dice of punishment was a huge, oversized set of percentage dice made out of solid iron. Each one weighed about 2.5 pounds. When I asked him why they were that heavy, he responded with, "One represents the weight of your actions. The other represents the weight of the punishment you face." But the one thing I will always remember about these fuckers was the sound they made. These were no cheap-ass plastic Chessex dice. This was 5 pounds of industrial-grade iron hitting a cheap wooden table. Shit felt and sounded like a fucking thunderstorm. Punishments would consist of anything from, your character gains disadvantage, to, you inadvertently pissed off a god, take a shit ton of damage. Unfortunately, the dice of punishment was causing the table to split due to overuse.
I've also heard of, I also saw a meme of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the, I don't even know what they're called, but they're dice for spicing up your romantic life with your partner.
Ooh.
And you got like 3d6, and they've got different you roll them, and they create like a string of like a sect act or something like that that you would do as part of a sex game with your partner. I saw a meme where that was those were the punishment dice. You had to roll those.
That's really good. You know Total Recall when Arnold's outside and he's, on Mars and he's getting his fucking eyeballs sucked out of his face because that's how that would work.
Right.
That screen cap.
Mm-hmm.
And the DM says my face when the player during my game is on their phone watching Critical Role. Ooh. I guess that could transition us into the Matt Mercer effect. You seen those?
Yeah, I have. I've seen that.
A lot of that. Here's a confession. I've never listened to or watched, I guess, Critical Role.
Me neither.
I know, I hear it's really good. It and a lot of other things, Stranger Things, Adventure Zone are doing wonders to have this, kind of D&D mass awakening that seems to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
But the Matt Mercer effect is where players somewhat new to the game show up to your session and get pissed when your DM style isn't the same as, and your level of production value, I suppose, is not the same as Matt Mercer's. Someone making money doing this.
That's his job. I mean,
yep.
If I could do that as my full-time job, I absolutely would, and I would have that type of production quality.
Yeah.
But it's the difference between, it's the same difference between professional porn and amateur porn. The difference in quality between what Matt Mercer is doing.
Oh, yeah.
And what we do sitting around the table.
Professionals can afford a better camera, multiple camera angles, a better
sound equipment.
Yeah, better shaving budget if that's what you're into, or a better hair growth budget. I guess you can take pills for that. Huh. Better acting.
Production team.
Yeah. Minis.
I think that would fall under the toys category.
Oh, you're right. Man, that would be the funniest thing we've ever said, Clayton. That was really good.
Well, I can't claim ownership of it.
Oh, no. You stole it?
I stole it.
Like a good GM.
Yep.
What else do we have on the table here?
I want to talk about just a couple of the different character archetypes that kind of come up again and again in different memes. There's a lot of them about just the chaotic neutral character, where the chaotic neutral character is just off the wall crazy and just disrupting the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not doing anything that has any rhyme or reason to it.
Because it's what my character would do.
Yep. And then I've got a few, basically stereotypes of different classes. Bards have two stereotypes that I've seen. One of them is usually it's a bard, but it can be anybody who has a sufficiently high charisma. And that's the character that wants to fuck everything.
Yep, that's common. And
I can't get too pissed off about it because I have played that character before.
Oh yeah, same dude. That's super fun. I don't think people are truly upset that archetype exists, but a lot of people are do something else already. They're just kind of okay, we get it. It does lead to some very fun and funny things. It does lead to some very cringy, creepy, awkward things.
Yeah. The other prolific bard meme is the meme of the bard being completely ineffective. My favorite is of she looks like she's maybe a high school girl or something, and it's a very tight close up of her face, and she is playing a flute. And the caption of it is, "The party is dying of a total party kill, but I'm only the bard." And she's crying. She's playing, and she's got tears streaming down her face. That's all the bard can do, is play their fluty little music while everybody else does the action in the scenario. That stereotype of the bards is becoming less and less true with each edition of the game. But I've said before, bard is my favorite character class to play. But god damn it, it touches a nerve that sometimes that is just a little too true.
A realistically armored female warrior approaches. What do? Monk. I bow to her as a sign of respect. Fighter. I raise my sword in her honor. Barbarian. I challenge her to a duel to test her mettle. Bard. I yell, I love mine, let me have a go at your gash! So it's a meme there for you. Spicy one, spicy take. I think it's cool that people keep wanting to play bards, so they're, actively making them better. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. After bards, I'd say the class that I see memes about the most are druids. Mostly about druids either being basically the Beastmaster, where they've just got oodles and oodles of creatures or like animals around them that they're operating as their own personal army, or the druid who never comes out of wild shape, who spends all of their time in wild shape. I'm thinking in particular of a meme of a picture of a black bear sitting like a real picture of a black bear sitting like a human at a picnic table, and the caption being something along the lines of the party is wanting to have an intervention about the druid that he can't stay in wild shape all the time.
That makes me think of Sir Barrington, which is unrelated to any of this, but are you familiar with the Ballad of Sir Barrington?
I am familiar with it, but I can't remember it. I know I've read it.
I want to make a bear character in D&D 3.5. The DM laughs. I make the bear a rogue, put every point I can into disguise. I prestige class as a spy to get more disguise. The DM says I can't speak English. I max out bluff. By growling and gesturing, I can fake speaking a language I don't speak. I use money to hire a butler NPC and give him a magical item to let him speak bear. Growl. An excellent suggestion, Master Barrington. We should really ask the group to investigate the Black Marsh. Over the course of the game, be knighted as Sir Barrington. The Queen holds a dinner in my honor. A guest becomes the first man to ever make a perception check that can beat my super crazy disguise ability. The guy shouts out loud, "Hey, that's not a guy, he's just a bear!" The man is escorted out of the castle while the guards apologize profusely for the indignity. "We're so sorry, Sir Barrington, very sorry for this man's behavior." Roar, shrug.
And that's a lot of the memes as well, is taking the absurdity of the rules and bending them and molding them into something that is completely wacky, completely out of bounds normally within a group, but twisting them because these games, the rules are made to be bent and made to be broken. Every game master changes the rules for their own personal game. And it's another part of fantasy or wish fulfillment where, man, wouldn't it be great to have a wacky idea like this and then have a game master who would go along with it?
Mm-hmm. Lots of stories. Really, really good. Those might be my favorite stories I read online, are wacky ideas that don't hurt anybody necessarily, and everyone kind of goes along with it, and the DM makes it work for you without disrupting the other player's fun. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I love that. I think it's a pretty decent reason or a decent way to explain not a lot of them, but every now and again you'll see a really great story about how kids, actual children, can be surprisingly great at D&D. I won't read any examples here, but there are plenty of stories of the DM with a little bit of finagling allows a kid to really enjoy the game, and then cut to a month later and the kid is a regular member or something like that.
And from personal experience, I've had kids as young as 7 years old in my games. They are phenomenal players. Mm-hmm. They get playing pretend. Believe it or not, kids understand how to play pretend, and they really get into their characters, and they can be some of the best players that you got at your table.
Before I had talked about how sometimes I get paid to play D&D with my job. Currently, every now and again, I get paid to DM. Not like Matt Mercer, though. We don't have anybody who can run the D&D game for D&D Club at the program that I run at this local junior high school. And so I'm DMing. It was going to be just an easy job for me. I was going to do Lost Mines of Phandelver. And then it turns out 2 of these little fucks had already played through the whole thing. So I'm making up shit as I go. And they love it. They fucking love it. They're eating it up. Yeah, you'd be surprised. Now, you also, it's so funny, I'm seeing in its purest form so many of the things we've already discussed, though, like, quote, that guy, murder hobos, creepy players who, want to, hit on every NPC, you got your fair share of that, too,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also new at the game. Nobody's that experienced. The players who have played Phandelver, that was their first time, and so they remember a lot about it, and they'll call me out when they're like, is this from Lost Mine of Phandelver? But they're still new enough to the game that you're seeing in a primordial, cesspool of life formation. You're seeing all of these pure tropes form, and they still ring true. They're kind of universal.
And something you said, that they're all pretty inexperienced. Not just as players, just as people, kids are inexperienced.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had a lot of the exposure to the way the world works. That's why a lot of these tropes are coming through, is because for a lot of kids, the only way that they understand these parts of the world is what they've seen on TV, what they've seen in movies, what they've read in books. So their understanding of the world is going to be a lot more limited. And so they only know the tropes.
Mm-hmm.
They only know sometimes they may only know the archetypes that are the main ideas behind certain things. So that's why a lot of that comes through.
I'll say this. It's really relaxing, very heartwarming to see this group of junior high and high schoolers. A lot of more junior high in this group. There are a couple of younger high schoolers. None of them are 17. So they're kids. Just blow their minds when I set a puzzle. Here's the puzzle in brief. You see 4 statues. Each are holding an object. Wait, upon closer inspection, one of the statues, its hands are crumbled away. You just see stumps. They do some investigation, perception roll. They find marble fingers leading a track down a hallway like breadcrumbs, where they find some goblins who took the item the statue was holding. And that's really simple, right?
Mm.
That's basic shit. Running for you guys, that would not fly. Nobody would care. But these kids figuring out that very simple puzzle using investigation checks and perception checks, and somebody did a history check on the statues, blew their minds. That's great.
And, well, that's just reflecting what kids are doing every single day. They're figuring out the world. They're figuring out how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the game is mirroring that in microcosm is just helping them with putting things together, with using those parts of their brain that are literally just now forming, the reasoning parts of their brain, of doing complex, abstract thought. That's one of the reasons why I feel like role-playing games are so awesome for people at that age, is because it lets them use these abilities that they are just now gaining as people.
Yeah. Several people in the group, and other people who haven't joined the group yet, but I think may, the D&D club specifically as part of this program, watching them wrap their heads around, wait, so you just say what you want to do, and then, you can do it? What? This is a game? Yeah, obviously, that's D&D, bro. Wait, where are you getting all this stuff? How do you know that that's what the goblin does? I just make it up, man. That's what I do. Some things never change, though, I think, across the age. And there's one really quick thing that I want to share, because it happens to me constantly, maybe to you. It happened the other day in this group I'm running for these kids. If you know it, the scene in The Office where Michael is confronting Dwight about his dentist appointment. And so the title is, When You Didn't Come Up With a Name for the Random NPC That the Party Takes an Unhealthy Liking To. This fucking happens all the goddamn time. And the player says, oh yeah, sounds like a good goblin. DM, yeah. What's his name? Boblin? Your goblin's name is Boblin? Yeah. Sounds a lot like Goblin. Maybe that's why he became a goblin.
And I've also seen other memes kind of along the same lines of the game master describing a room, and they're the game master describes basically the plot point person who is there, and then in a one-off line they describe some other character on the other end of a bar, and all of the players just home in on that throwaway character, and the game master is sitting there scrambling, coming up with a name, coming up with a backstory for this character that isn't at all related to the plot, was just thrown in as a little bit of flavor, but now has become the focus of the session. And that absolutely happens more often than not. Whenever a game master is describing a scene, the players don't immediately go for the character with the yellow question mark hovering over their head. They go for whatever the game master thinks is the least important thing in the room.
Constantly. I have one more very spicy one I'd like to share. It's not really related to any topics.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other categories you'd like to bring up?
I think I'm good for now. I have another one that might be its own topic. I'll just tuck that into my back pocket.
All right. Well, I'll close us out on this.
Sure.
The king is notified of an impending doom upon his kingdom. Horrified by this grave news, the king informs his trusted steward to seek out the fiercest warriors, the most daring adventurers, the most powerful casters, and the most agile assassins in order to set out to stop this apocalyptic nightmare. The king gave his steward 100,000 gold for each member hired. The king didn't know his steward used about 90% of that gold on hookers and blow. To cover his ass, the steward hired 4 fuckwits to do the job for 10 gold each. You, my dear players, are those fuckwits. Welcome to Dungeons and Dipshits. I play in that.
Yep. You're going to get more money along the way anyway. All right, let's go ahead and go into geek things. I only have one geek thing this week. That is a YouTube channel called The Lockpicking Lawyer.
About that one.
What this guy does is he defeats all sorts of locks surprisingly quickly and easily. Despite the fact of being called the lockpicking lawyer, he almost never has to pick a lock. He's usually finding other weaknesses in the locks and taking advantage of those. Don't really have any examples, but it's an absolutely fascinating show or channel. The guy who does it is a very good narrator. I've learned a lot about lockpicking and a lot about defeating different types of locks in the past week.
That's cool. I might need a lockpicking lawyer if I continue to accidentally fly with my lockpicks in my bag. So far, no one's questioned me on them, but that's gotta be like a ticking time bomb, right? I just keep them in there. I kind of forget about it. I don't do anything nefarious with them. They're just kind of fun. The only geek thing I have is that within the past 5 days, I forget the exact day, it was the 25th anniversary of the Stargate movie. And there's been a lot of Stargate news, talk on the internet, people posting kind of heartfelt fan reminiscing. And I don't know if there's any announced plans in the works. What are their names? Dean Devlin was the writer, I think, and Roland Emmerich was the director of the movie. I know they've both said that I think they're done with Stargate. They had wanted to do a sequel around 2014, a movie sequel. Both of them kind of had to come to terms with the series SG-1, which I really like, and then the spin-offs as well of SG-1. Those two original people from the movie didn't really care for it. It was kind of taken from them, but regardless, they came to terms with that show. Anyway, a lot of hubbub about Stargate. It's a great property. It's kind of overlooked, I think, a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see in the next year something announced for some more Stargate coming our way. Be pretty cool.
This isn't Stargate, but Galaxy Quest is having. There is a documentary about basically a retrospective on the movie Galaxy Quest coming out here in a couple weeks. It's made by the people who run the Screen Junkies YouTube channel.
So there's going to be a documentary about a fake show that was in itself, a movie about a fake show that was almost like doing a documentary, right, on Galaxy Quest, and then the shit hits the fan. Isn't that the plot of that movie?
Kinda, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but
that's great.
I'm a huge Galaxy Quest fan. I've loved it ever since it came out. It is one of the top 4 or 5 Star Trek movies, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really good. I'd put it up there with Generations.
I would say it's probably 3. I would put it behind. No, I'd say it was before. I would put it behind in order 6, 2, and 8.
Which ones are 6 and 8?
So, The Undiscovered Country, The Wrath of Khan, First Contact, and then Galaxy Quest.
Okay, all right. I like Generations a lot. I recognize it's not a great film, but I also like those 3 you mentioned. And I like Galaxy Quest. If you haven't seen Galaxy Quest, go check it out. If you haven't seen the original Stargate movie, go check it out. They're both really good.
All right, Kyle. What do you say we stop this bullshit and start rolling some dice?
Let's get out of here. I leave. I'm walking away now. Later.
This has been a production of Alien Familiar Media. You can find past episodes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. This production is protected under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivatives license. Music for this episode is Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale and can be found at freemusicarchive.org.